So guys, today what I wanted to talk about was software engineering interviews. Now, this is going to mainly apply to those of you guys who are applying to be a junior engineer, a new grad engineer, or an intern. I was there a few years ago. I know how difficult it can be and how many thousands of hours you can be spending on leak code and cracking the coding interview and all that sort of stuff. Freshman year was pretty brutal, but then sophomore year, I kind of changed my whole approach to this. Not in terms of how many hours I was studying. I didn't study more, I actually started studying less. But I started thinking way differently. My problem-solving strategy, as it applied to my psychology, shifted. And I learned about these things by reading more about psychology, the psychology of learning and problem-solving, and also by talking to some interviewers and other people who are really, really good at solving interview questions. What I'm going to talk about are basically ways that you can solve the problem by changing the way that you think about the problem. So the first thing is going to seem pretty obvious, but really it's just repeating back the question to your interviewer. And this will actually help you understand the problem way more and maybe solve it way faster. And it's rooted in science. Feynman used to call it the Feynman technique because I guess he would try to teach something to somebody else in order for him to learn it way better. Now the science behind it is that you actually are able to learn something way better when you teach than when you are just sitting there listening to somebody else talk. It's not very intuitive to think that the teacher is actually learning more than the student who's listening, but it's been shown to be the case because apparently when you're teaching, you activate parts of the brain that deal more with retaining memory and comprehending that memory and that knowledge way more deeply. That seems like a lot, but really what it boils down to is repeat the question back to your interviewer and explain what's being asked. And the interviewer will either correct you or you might realize something about the problem that you didn't know initially. Or if it's a super easy or obvious question like sort an array or something like that, then that might be a little bit overkill. But this definitely has saved me a lot in longer, more complicated problems where sometimes I didn't even understand the problem until halfway through writing a solution, which is very, very bad. The next thing is what you should do is think about how you would solve the problem for the simplest case. And when I say simple, I mean actually very, very simple. If your input is a matrix, put in a one-dimensional array or a one-by-one array. If it's a string, put in an empty string or a one-character string. If it's a number, put in a small number like 0 or 1. Then solve it for that. Write a solution to solve just that simplest case in the most naive way possible. Keep in mind, most naive. You're just trying to get something working right now. The next thing you should do is to write a test to make sure that works. It's going to help you be sure that you're not making any mistakes this early because this sets the foundation for the later problem solving. And it also impresses your interviewer because the whole industry is big on tests because they're super important. The next thing you should do, again, increase the complexity of the input by a little bit. Solve that, write a test. Now, in freshman year, I would sometimes go an entire hour without getting anything because I was just trying to get the most optimal solution that solves any input right off the bat, and I'd go an hour without solving anything. Now, when you start doing this, you're actually at least getting something for something. You're getting a solution for at least a small input or a version of what a user might input. And you'll find that these baby steps are way more manageable and easy to think about. And they baby step you towards the right solution pretty fast. And what I'd recommend for you to do is to actually practice this. And at first it might feel awkward because you might want to just go right to the answer. But trust me, once this is habitualized in your mind, it will save you so much time and you'll be solving questions you didn't even think you'd dream of being able to solve walking into an interviewer and seeing problems that you read nowhere. So after you've baby stepped your way to being able to solve the most general kind of solution, like any kind of, and the most general kind of input, any kind of input, it's still going to be pretty unoptimal. Tell your interviewer what the time complexity is going to be for this really, really bad solution that you have right now, and then explain to him what part of the algorithm is inefficient, and see if it's something you've seen before. See if that particular bottleneck is another algorithm you've seen somewhere, and then try to cut back on that. Try to make that more efficient. See if you're duplicating any sort of operations, that sort of thing. So pretty much there you have it. By breaking up the path to getting to the optimal solution into smaller, more manageable chunks, you greatly increase the odds that you'll have anything to show for yourself by the end, and you create an easier route towards getting the optimal, most efficient solution that can handle any user input. Some bonus points that you can get with your interviewer, and that might actually help you understand your code as you're coding, are writing better names. Write descriptive names, even if you feel like they're too long. Clarity over being concise is always my motto that saved me. Another thing is writing test cases before you actually write the code for the solution. It'll impress your interviewer because many people don't do it. And some people don't even write test cases, but that's pretty bad. Explain what you're doing out loud. Like I said, going back to the Feynman technique, going back to teaching, as you explain out loud what you're doing, it can actually help you solve the problem way faster, because problem solving is pretty synonymous with learning. You're basically learning what the problem is and learning the solution. And as you speak about the problem, speak about what you're doing, it makes it way easier to come up with a solution. I've had situations where I couldn't solve a problem for a few hours on my own, but a problem with similar difficulty was way easier to solve in an interview. And I realize now that's because I've been talking the whole time. Don't just talk minimally, like talk all the time. Talk through every step. And if you can, explain what other solutions could have been possible. And that might not always be the case. So that's all I have for you guys today about this. I don't normally talk too much about software engineering or the interview process or all of that stuff, just because there's already so much good advice out there, but I will comment and give my 2 cents about things that I kind of see haven't been touched upon. But follow, subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the latest on IPOs, seed rounds, all these other funding rounds, tech startups, new technologies, and all the awesome stuff that are just coming about every single day. See you guys next time.